monster in the sun. An astronomer was observing the sun through a telescope in order to take an exact draught of the several spots which appear on the face of it. While he was intent upon his observations, he was suddenly surprised with a new and astonishing appearance. A large portion of the surface of the sun was at once covered by a monster of enormous size and horrible form. It had an immense pair of wings, a great number of legs, and a long and vast proboscis, and that it was alive was very apparent from his quick and violent motions, which the observer could from time to time plainly perceive. Being sure of the fact, for how could he be mistaken in what he saw so clearly, our philosopher began to draw many surprising conclusions from premises so well established. He calculated the magnitude of this extraordinary animal, and found that he covered about 2 square degrees of the sun's surface, that placed upon earth he would spread over half one hemisphere of it, and that he was 7 or 8 times as big as the moon. But what was most astonishing was the prodigious heat that he must endure. It was plain that he was something of the nature of the salamander, but a far more fiery temperament, for it was demonstrable from the clearest principles that in his present situation he must have acquired a degree of heat 2,000 times exceeding that of red-hot iron. It was a problem worth considering, whether he subsisted upon the gross vapors of the sun, and so from time to time cleared away those spots which they are perpetually forming, and which would otherwise wholly obscure and incrustate its face, or whether it might not feed on the solid substance of the orb itself, which by this means, together with the constant expense of light, must soon be exhausted and consumed, or whether he was not now and then supplied by the falling of some eccentric comet into the sun. However this might be, he found by computation that earth would be but short allowance for him for a few months, and farther, it was no improbable conjecture that, as earth was destined to be destroyed by fire, this fiery, flying monster would remove hither at the appointed time, and might much more easily and conveniently effect a conflagration than any comet hitherto provided for that service. In the earnest pursuit of these, and many like the deep and curious speculations, the astronomer was engaged, and preparing to communicate them to the public. In the meantime, the discovery began to be much talked of, and all the virtuosi gathered together to see so strange a sight. They were equally convinced of the accuracy of the observation, and of the conclusions so clearly deduced from it. At last, one, more cautious than the rest, was resolved, before he gave a full assent to the report of his senses, to examine the whole process of the affair, and all the parts of the instrument. He opened the telescope, and behold! a small fly was enclosed in it, which, having settled on the center of the object glass, had given occasion to all this marvelous theory. We should never estimate things beyond our reach by the narrow standard of our own capacities. The Hermit and the Bear. A certain hermit having done a good office to a bear, the grateful creature was so sensible of his obligation, that he begged to be admitted as the guardian and companion of his solitude. The hermit willingly accepted his offer, and conducting him to his cell, they passed their time together in an amicable manner. One very hot day, the hermit having laid him down to sleep, the officious bear employed himself in driving away the flies from his friend's face. But in spite of all his care, one of the flies perpetually returned to the attack, and at last settled upon the hermit's nose. "Now I shall have you, most certainly," said the bear, and with the best intentions imaginable, gave him a violent blow on the face. which very effectually indeed demolished the fly, but at the same time mangled in a most shocking manner his benefactor's face. The random zeal of inconsiderate friends is often as hurtful as the wrath of enemies. The Peacock. The Peacock, who at first was distinguished only by a crest of feathers, preferred a petition to Juno that he might be honored also with a train. As the bird was a particular favorite, Juno readily enough assented, and his train was ordered to surpass that of every fowl in the creation. The Peacock, conscious of his superb appearance, thought it requisite to assume a proportionable dignity of gait and manners. The common poultry of the farmyard were quite astonished at his magnificence, and even the pheasants themselves beheld him with an eye of envy. But when he attempted to fly, he perceived himself to have sacrificed all his activity to ostentation, and that he was encumbered by the pomp in which he had placed his glory. The parade and ceremony belonging to the great are often a restraint upon their freedom and dignity.